All right, there we go. Hey, today we got my boy Glacier. Glacier, you want me to call you Ray or Glacier?
Call me Glacier, man. That's how ever since day one we call each other Cat and Glacier. So
Man, it's good to have you here on the Cat's Corner. And this is something new for me, but it's the same thing we do all the time. Talk to my friends.
that's right, man. And I'm just I'm thrilled to death to be here, man. I'm glad you got a podcast because I mean, as entertaining as you are, and as many people as you know, I mean, you're the kind of person who should have a podcast. So, and you know me, man. I do anything for it. So, as much as you'll have me on, I'll be here.
Well, as much as I like to tell y'all good news, I got a bit of bad news for you.
Uh-oh.
The Sheik is here. The Diamond Sheik is here.
Why am I the bad news? Why is this happening?
I didn't say you were bad news like bad news. I'm just saying, you're richer than everybody. You probably one of the richest men in the world. And now you got to talk to us poor Souths.
Yeah.
Listen, I love you guys. Both of you guys have taught me a lot. And I've got to sit under each of your learning trees. So it's an honor to be here.
Oh man, thank you, Sheik.
So, Glacier, I want to get right into this because I've been thinking about it. I want to ask you some questions that as a friend and as a person that worked with you, how in the heck did you get into wrestling?
We're Resite. Of course, we offer all-inclusive site work. We're Resite. Of course, we have a dynamic site crew. We're Resite. We have secure foundations. We're Resite. Of course, we're good stewards. Resite redefines the way site work is done. Contact us at resite.com. It's re-site.com.
Well, the first thing is, and I don't even know if you and I have ever really sat down and talked about this. I like a lot of people, I grew up a pro wrestling fan. I grew up in South Georgia, Brunswick, Georgia, which is about an hour north of Jacksonville, Florida. It's right on the Georgia-Florida line. And my dad was a wrestling fan. He took me and my twin brother to watch wrestling. We watched it with him. And when we were kids, me and my twin brother, no lie, we always used to say that, one day we pretended to be Jack and Jerry Briscoe, who at one point were the NWA World Tag Team Champs. And, we always said one day when we grow up, we're going to be the NWA World Tag Team Champs. And, fortunately, getting to know Dusty down the road, that he ended up making that dream happen for me. But went off to college at Valdosta State. And, we both played college right there in Georgia. And luckily for me, I never ever, when I was a kid, I dreamed of it. Well, once I got older and realized, especially, you hear the stories now, a lot of them are being publicly told about how tough Eddie Graham was and how, the reputation of championship wrestling from Florida and Georgia championship wrestling, you didn't get in that, you weren't in those two territories unless anybody that was there had a tough reputation. And, so I just assumed hey, I've been in martial arts, I played football, but that to me was like a different level of tough. And I was like, man, I don't know if I'm that tough, and just, the way fate would have it, I go play ball at Valdosta State, and it put things in motion to where when I was there, they had a local TV station, TV 46, I believe it was. And they used to tape on Saturday mornings. They would tape a little wrestling show that would air on the local channel there. And, eventually me and some of my football and baseball buddies, we found out about it. We went to watch the TV taping and, act like complete idiots in the crowd, and through all that, I met a guy named Rick Allen who wrestled at Sandy Beach. He was from Jacksonville. One of his buddies went to Valdosta State, played football for a while with me. And Rick and I got to know each other. I started kind of hanging out with him, going to some of the wrestling shows. And then eventually he introduced me to a guy named Fred Avery, who was a big mammoth wrestler, about 310 pounds, but very athletic, could move really well, had his wrestling, ring name was Easy Rider Ruckus. He looked like a big old bear. And eventually, as I was getting ready to graduate, me and one of my best teammates, he asked us, were we serious about wanting to get into training professional wrestling. At first, I said, "Heck no, man! I can't do that." And because it was back then, this was in April of '87. It was still a very protected business. I mean, there weren't wrestling schools on every corner, almost like there are now, and you had to really be invited in. You know, you couldn't just say, "Oh, I want to go be trained to be a wrestler," because you couldn't find anybody who would probably take you on. So just through that, I got to know Rick and got to know Fred. And in April of '87, about 2 months before I graduated college, that's where it all started, right there in Valdosta, Georgia, training in his ring in his backyard in that South Georgia heat.
Listen, I know it's one thing about you. You can talk. All we had to do is just throw one
just
thing
let me
out
go.
there.
That's why I figured I'd get a lot of it out of the way.
You threw out about 25 names. But with what you said, it was not a wrestling school on every corner, right? With that being said, do you think that bettered the sport today or made it worse? That you can go to anywhere and learn to get into wrestling, not go to anywhere and learn. Some of these schools are open, but I mean, what are they teaching you? How do you teach someone to be a professional wrestler? Right. So do you think that hurt the business today that there are so many schools?
You know what? That's a great question, Kat. I mean, I think in the beginning, it was harmful to the business, before there were enough schools that were owned by reputable wrestlers, or reputable trainers, because, really, and that's probably really come about, I would say, in probably the last 10, 15 years, maybe, but I mean, now there are, some very reputable schools out there. And let's face it, I mean, if you're searching to get into professional wrestling and you're serious about it, it's pretty easy to find one of those if you just start researching that on the internet. But back when the schools first started, which I would say probably would be around, the early 90s, seemed to be when some of them started to pop up. People, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people tell me that they would go, interview to be in a wrestling school, and the guy who was the so-called trainer or coach would say, "Oh yeah, I was so and so, the mask whoever," and how you going to prove if he was or he wasn't, and so and I always say, you don't know what you don't know. You've heard me say that, and if you don't know any better, then you don't know if this person's lied to you or not. And a lot of them are really good at selling you on the fact that they could train you. And
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible at all for a person who have never been in, let's say, one of the big shows?
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible that they can show someone else how to get there, which means that person that they teach is going to take a leap over them? That person going to go, that student going to go somewhere where even the master of the teacher didn't go. Do you think that's possible?
I do, because this business is, the good and the bad of this is, if you're an opportunist and you have the talent, you have that quote unquote it factor, is that this is, not a business that rewards you for time served. You can be the most deserving, the nicest, most dedicated, hardest working person in the business, and the break never comes. You can be one of the best. You can become one of the best performers and best coach, and then a coach. But for some reason, as a performer, the break never came. I mean, as far as becoming a household name, as far, hitting it on the big stage and staying there, making a household name. So yeah, there's definitely some trainers and coaches out there today that have built an equally good name as a trainer or coach, maybe even more of a reputation than what they did as a wrestler. So I definitely think, a talent could come along and as you say, just kind of, jump over them if they have that it factor and become a star, someone who maybe their coach or trainer didn't have that success where they became a household name. They could certainly find that, that talent and coach them and train them. And I always say it's not what you know, it's who's willing to say they know you. A good trainer who's built a good name can certainly put you in front of the people who can, give you that opportunity at say a WWE or an AEW or New Japan or Impact or wherever.
So speaking of success, sorry, Kat, sorry to cut you off.
No, go right ahead.
I want to know your opinion on this. Speaking of success, is it easier now that we have social media and everybody's connected and everybody's watching videos and you can see what people do at these indie shows? Do you think it's easier for talent to find success, even though they may not be properly trained, but they might just be over with the people online. And how do you feel about that?
Kat, go ahead. I'll let you
It's
answer that.
different. You know what? It's different. Today is different. Back in the day, for instance, I told one of my karate students this. He just hit 1 million followers.
Wow.
He one of my karate students. He just hit 1 million followers. And he was on there. He was jumping. He was so happy. But he cannot win the big karate tournament. But he can go out and get 1 million followers by doing the flips and stuff in the yard and showing like he's so excited about doing something that's pretty. It looked great, but it's pretty simple for a lot of martial artists. Now, back then, I told him this. I said, listen, you jumped and clapped and got so happy when you hit 1 million followers. I jumped and clapped when I got $1 million. So back in the day, we didn't have followers. So we wasn't really going for that click. We were trying to build our persona, build our character and our brand into something that that could take care of my family. So it's a little different today. Now you can be over on the internet, but you may not be over on TV, or you may not be that big person on TV.
Yeah. And that's really what it all comes down to is when you get the professional wrestling business, let's just face it, you get it in the entertainment business. The main goal is to be able to make good money, to make, hopefully make a good living doing it. And I think a lot of, to your question, Sheik, I think a lot of, young aspiring wrestlers, because I don't put any age on that, because, there's people that break into wrestling when they're older. Some break in at, 18 or younger. But it's, if you get all caught up in, how many people, liked my video, all that, are you monetizing that? And there are some wrestlers who are monetizing it on the independent scene. And I think those are the ones that people should model, because at the end of the day, if you're not making any money doing this, if they call it show business, not show hobby.
Now I got a question for you. Do you think it's better to get into business? Let's say you can get into business 2 ways. One, you can get into business because of your skills, your talent. And the other being that you can get in because you got 5 million followers. Which way would you want to get in this? I'm just saying, I know it's hypothetically, but which one would be the better way for you that you can imagine getting into the business? WWE or one of the big companies.
Yeah, I know how I'd answer, but I'd like to see how, Sheik being, like I said, an aspiring wrestler coming up in the business, I'd like to see how he answers that.
I think it's great if you have followers, and I think it's great if you have a social media presence. Yes, there is a way to monetize that. Again, there's 2 words to our profession. It's professional and wrestler. The professional part, you could have that down just by using social media, just by being someone successful outside of the ring. Sure. But when you're in there and you're not trained, I think that's when I have a problem with it. You could be the most popular wrestler on Instagram, but I'm not going to be comfortable working with you if I'm not comfortable working with you.
But so how would you know that? How would you know that? You can't find out until you find out.
You would be able to know just by watching someone how they work in the ring, right? Obviously, this person is going to have videos online of them wrestling. That's why they got so popular. But there's no substitute and no way that you can hide bad technique, bad training. As being someone who has trained hard and who has perfected fundamentals and had coaches that wouldn't stop working with me until I perfected those said fundamentals, we can tell when someone is not using those fundamentals.
But Glacier would tell you this, Sheik. Glacier would tell you that charisma is 90%. That's a number I've kept hearing over and over and over and over when I was wrestling. It was a cat. You're not that good in the ring, but you got charisma. And that's 90% of what can make you successful in this business. What do you think about that, Glacier?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's the truth. And this business is, and Sheik, you remember when you came through, the Nightmare Factory camp, one of the first things that we said to you guys is, in these 12 weeks, we can teach you the moves. And let's face it, we taught you pretty much all the moves in less than 12 weeks. I mean, we spent the last, 2-3 weeks really prepping for the showcase. But it's exactly what you said. You let's face it, in the wrestling business, you have to bring something to the table that's not there already. That's going to make you stand out. It's going to make people want to watch you. And yes, like you said, the charisma and the followers, that'd be great. But if I had to choose, I'm going to look at somebody that's I know is a great entertainer, that draws me in and makes me feel something emotionally. And Dusty used to always say, I just watched a promo with him the other day where he said, charisma, it's either you have it or you don't. And I've seen some people who have learned that realized that they didn't know how to show their charisma, and once they figured it out, it came out. But you gotta, but I would much rather, to answer the question, I'd much rather have someone who is charismatic. They bring that it factor to the table, and they don't have any followers out there. And I can say, you know what? We can teach you how to wrestle. We can teach you how to do this. As long as you bring that charisma, and I promise, the 5 million followers, they will come eventually. But it goes back to being safe in the ring, being able to work with whoever you're in there with. But bringing that charisma, that's a very, very vital thing.
But talking on the other hand too, Sheik, I think to go a little further what you said, it's more about not just knowing the moves and know how to wrestle. You want to know a little bit of both. You can have charisma 90%, but you still got to be able to wrestle just to keep the other guy safe. Right. Absolutely. Because if you just messy and you just doing all these moves, but none of them are right, most of the time the other guy will get hurt.
I think speaking from someone that's watched both of you growing up and watched how you guys work in the ring, and you guys are both of you are very precise with your kicks, with your movements, with all your moves, that to keep the other person not only safe, but make it look as devastating as possible. I think that you guys would be the foremost authority on this subject. That's why I wanted to toss that question your way.
So Sheik, let me get something straight. What do you mean when you were growing up, you watched us? How old are you?
Look, man, I just had Glacier tell me that. I just had Glacier tell me he graduated in April 1987. I wasn't even born yet. So
and that was college.
I was born a few months at college. So I was born a few months after that. So
you a baby. You're a baby Sheik.
Hey.
He's a baby Sheik.
I feel like in a lot of ways I am. I feel like in a lot of ways I am, because I'm always learning from people. So I feel like that's a good thing.
You know what? About Sheik Glacier, I really like that he's opening up. When I first met him, he was just closed in. Everything, he just wanted to just soak in everything. He wanted to learn everything, but he wasn't open to getting what was naturally organic. You know what I'm saying, Glacier? You can go and be the best wrestler in the ring as you want to. But if you don't feel what's around you, the energy, none of that stuff mean anything to anybody. If you can't listen to the crowd, if you can't feel the crowd, if you can't feel like the moment, it's hard for you to be. It was hard for me to be successful in the ring because I'm just running around. I'm just running around doing what the next move. I go to this and that. I know Glacier will get mad if we give it away. He hate to give away any secrets.
I do, and I understand that we are where we are at this point. I mean, I just watched before we came on. I'm in the middle of watching, Al Snow's OVW series on Netflix, wrestlers, and
great.
I never thought I would see, Al Snow, be the one who goes on and kind of shows behind the scenes, but I get it, because
he's a snitch. He's giving away secret. You'll never know somebody who made so much money in the business, did so much to build a business. Now he's tearing it down. That's all a show like that is doing. You don't have to say it. You on the cat's corner. I'll say it. Al Snow is giving away some of the best kept secrets in the business. People that we wanted to, things that we wanted to keep to ourselves.
Right. But what I will say is this is, and you
won't say that, huh?
No, what I'm saying is to follow up on what you're saying there is because you and I were talking about it is if in my opinion, if because I'm a huge fan of Al, personally as a friend and just professionally, if there's somebody who was going to go out and explain, pull back the curtain and really explain, the magic of our business, I feel like he's the best qualified because he does. I just know he does care and love this business, and when he does explain it, he explains it with complete confidence because he knows that all these decades of experience, he knows what he's talking about. So I do certainly appreciate that. But Sheik, just to kind of circle back to what Ernest the Cat was saying here a minute ago was, when you came through and you first started. So I'm pulling from your experience from when we first met and you started training, with the camp that you went through. If I'm correct, I mean you had no training before that, right?
Correct. Yeah, I didn't even know how to get into a ring when I got there.
Right,
Yeah,
and
I know how to step into
which
a
is
ring.
great because that's I would much rather have that than someone who's learned and possibly learned incorrectly, and then we got to go in and kind of break bad habits. But
bad habits are hard to break. Absolutely.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
And getting in you've heard me say this over and over too is you can have all the great tools in the world, but one of my big things that for me to check off about as far as whether you're going to be successful or not is coachability. Can I coach you and you listen to what I say and apply it? That's if you can't do that, the road's going to be a lot harder because I don't care what it is, but especially in this business because our ultimate goal is to be safe and make sure that we both, the two of us, the four of us, whoever, come out of that ring and somebody didn't get hurt because somebody was careless, or didn't even know or was improperly trained. So, and so that's a big thing for me is how coachable are you? Are you coachable? I don't care how great of an athlete you are. I don't care how much charisma you have. If you can't be humble enough and you can't, listen enough to be coachable, and I say something once or twice or three times, and then when I show you, and I think it's a pretty fundamental thing, and you're not doing it. If I see you're really trying and you just don't get it for some reason, but you're trying, there's a difference there. But I'm saying I know you should be listening. 9 out of the 10 people in the group somehow get it, and you don't. After time, then then we got to reassess why you're not getting it.
Glacier, let me ask you a question. Back in the day, let's say 97, when we was in WCW, who was the most underrated wrestler that you recognize in the business?
Wow, man, that's a really, really good question. I'd say the one person that popped into my mind, and there may be somebody else that if I think long and hard about it, but the one person that popped in my mind who eventually got a pretty good run, in WCW was Lash LaRue. You remember Lash?
Oh yeah.
I mean, Lash was a young man who, he's talking about a guy who's super dedicated. I mean, he lives, in Alabama somewhere across the line. I mean, he was driving back and forth like, I don't know, 3 hours each way every 4 days a week to train at the power plant. And I just watched him get better and better and better. And he quietly did that. He wasn't looking for anybody's pity. I mean, he was quietly making that drive. And, and eventually he got an opportunity and he made the most of it. So I'm sure there's several that I could think of, but Lash just was the first person that popped in my head.
Now let me ask you this, and just think about it. Who was the most overrated then? I'm not talking about now or then. I'm just talking about at that moment. Who was the most overrated wrestler that you can think of that was in WCW around the time between 97, 2000, something like that?
I don't know. Glacier, probably.
No. That's the answer I gave. That's the answer I gave on that. No.
Man, I don't know. I'm gonna that's a hard question.
I'm gonna tell you this. I'm not afraid to go out there.
I know you. That's what I love about you.
Goldberg was the most overrated wrestler back then because Goldberg really green. He was green. He didn't really know how to wrestle. I'm not saying he couldn't fight, but he did not know how to wrestle. So I think at the time he was 100 and something straight win. He was so green, he really couldn't have the match that a person that was that over should have had, could have.
But and we can both attest to this is, but Bill's dedication to the power plant, to wanting to get better and working hard to get better. That was in my opinion, such an unfair position to put anybody in.
Exactly.
But he's someone who he learned fast because he was a great athlete and he's very willing to learn. I feel like Bill. I mean, it was almost an impossible situation to put anybody in, but man, he learned fast on the job, and very quickly he got into a groove,
But back then we had a bunch of guys like Billy Kidman, and Billy Kidman would look at me and say, "You overrated," and I used to say, "Yes, I am." Yes, I am. I don't know anything about this business. But like you said, I'm willing to learn. And as the days went on, and as I kept putting in the work, if something happened, it clicked. You know what I'm saying? It clicked. The thing hit. So, okay, I give a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and let's see if that'll work. And bang, it worked. So it started catching up with it.
Right. And let's face it. I mean, there's one of the truest statements in the whole world is that hindsight is 20/20. If we could go back and rewind, I mean, I don't think anybody would dispute the fact that, we should have, from the gate, you should have been able to come out and display your charisma from the very beginning. I mean, we kind of inadvertently, from the booking committee on down, they kind of, in a way, they kind of suppressed, your charisma at first, because when you and I were tagging, that wasn't, not that you weren't really allowed to, it's just that I don't think anybody really knew that you had that great side of you, because no one said, "Hey, show us that." But once that came out, man, I mean, I look back and think, wow, if those, unintentional restrictions or whatever wouldn't have been on it from the very beginning, how much more, that would have been received.
Because our tag team, we probably would have went to the rocket to the top with the money they put into your character. And that whole thing, man, it could have been really, really good. But I think back and I think about that stuff then. People had to learn me just as I had to learn them. I didn't come into the company or to the business with a big, big mouth. I mean, I had a big mouth, but nobody knew about it. So it wasn't, I started letting it out because you start meeting, man. Think about our locker room.
Right.
Think about who was in our locker room in 97 at that time. Think about all the superstars that was in our locker room. Think about now. You got Chris Jericho that's on top right now in AEW. But think about this. He was in his prime in WCW at that time.
Yeah.
And it was hard for him to get into TV time. And he was talented then, and he was younger, and it was hard because we had so much talent in them that I don't think they put placement on who's better than who. We had so much talent. Think about it. I can name about 10 guys in there that were major superstars.
Yeah, and that was we were still in a time of, kind of that pecking order of seniority, because there was, Macho, there was Hulk, there was, Flair, all those guys that were these legendary figures were there. And that's the one thing I always say about whether people were fans of Glacier or whatever during that time or not. I mean, we were a part of arguably one of the greatest rosters of all time during the greatest era of wrestling ever. And no one can dispute that.
So, Sheik, let me ask you a question, Sheik. If you were going to develop, if you were going to go on a run, let's say for one of the companies, WWE or AEW, how do you see yourself and what do you see yourself being? What do you see yourself doing? Do you see yourself as the Sheik or what do you see yourself? What would you project?
I see myself as the Sultan of Sapphires, the ruler of rubies, the Emperor of Emeralds as the Diamond Sheik. Of course.
You trying to get over?
You asked me what I see myself as, so I told you.
Yeah, you showed me a little bit too, but I think he's trying to get over on us too.
Hey, if you feel that way, I must be doing my job very well.
You doing your job very well. You doing your job.
I have a little baseball to pitch at Glacier for a second. I want to circle back to you talking about the power plant and talk about the WWE Performance Center and maybe the New Japan Dojo. All these developmental facilities seem to be helping their promotions out. For instance, let's say a talent on your roster needs to perfect their craft or run some spots, whatever the case may be, whatever they want to try out. They have these facilities to go to, which I'm sure was the case with the power plant back in the day. You guys probably, had that place to rep out stuff and do drills. How do you feel that AEW doesn't put an emphasis on something like that? With it being one of the top promotions out right now.
Pat, do you want to go first? You want me to?
You could go first.
Oh, yeah, it's it's a big question to me too, because I would think that would be something that would be a great addition to their company to be able to have that. And I don't know for sure, even though let's face it, it's pretty common knowledge that all three of us know a lot of people with AEW. I certainly think they would benefit from it. I really do. And hopefully it's coming down the pike. I haven't heard anything. I really haven't heard anything one way or the other on it, but I think it would be a tremendous value.
Now, Glacier, just to go a little further with that, when WCW was in that, we had the power plant. Whatever I didn't know in the ring, I could always go to the power plant, work with some of the best talent. As you know, the Nashes, the Flairs, the DDP, everybody was down in that power plant, would come down there and work on a good match. Right. And people like me benefit from that because I got to see how to apply it, how to do it, and be safe about it. So right. WCW had something in the power plant that helped keep us wrestlers in the ring safe. Right. Because we gave people chance to practice and to work out, and they made sure that we had a place to do that. We have 4 rings in a nice warehouse just to go out and practice this stuff. Now, this is what I was thinking too, Glacier, Sheik. When AEW first came, I thought they were concerned. Well, the bigger concern that I heard was that they wanted to make the business better. They wanted to start a union. They wanted to start helping the lives of the wrestler. That's what I heard, and that's what I thought was there. What happened to the union? What happened to making the business better? Because right now, with what I see with AEW, AEW is just a machine running just like the last and the old machine. They running people through the cycle. They're not doing anything to adjust the outcome and where those people go, how those people live after they wrestle, after they finish wrestling. I just don't see it. I'm sorry I went off that long. But
no, that's a good. Yeah, everything you said was spot on. So, Sheik, what's your take on?
I feel like it's hard being a new company, right? I've started a couple of companies myself, and I know how long it takes to get it to a place where it's maybe not autonomous, might not be the right word, but where it can kind of run and it grows its legs. Starting a business is kind of like raising a child. You're not going to be able to leave that child alone, on its own until it's at a certain age when it can fend for itself. And do I think AEW has a potential to, still provide those things to make the business better? Yes, it does. Do I think that it's on the horizon? I don't know. I'm not that deep into that company, but I feel like what they've done for wrestling, for fans, is a good service because it gave us something to watch that wasn't the same old product that was on for years and years and years. Not to say there's anything wrong with that product. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's always good to have options. That is the definition of luxury, is that you have options. So
Hey, if I'm watching one wrestling match on Channel 4 and then watching another wrestling match, totally different people, totally different company, it's all the same. It's one big business. And I think in business today, you start a business on principles. And somewhere along the way, you got to maintain those lines, because you can't just say, well, I'm going to get back to you guys. I'm going to get back to that later. I think when you start like that on principle, you got to do principle things. You got to do things that make people believe that you're headed in the right direction. Because you never know how long this life of wrestler will last.
That's true.
You don't know how long. You don't know how long it'll last and how long you gonna last. And I was just sitting with a wrestler. I don't know if you remember the guy, Buzz Sawyer.
Yeah.
You remember Glacier?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We just did autograph signing in Ohio. First time meeting this guy. He sit on my left, really quiet. Man, this guy right here was so funny. I really enjoyed talking to him. And then once I went back and did my little history on him, my little research, he was one of the top wrestlers, him and his brother, right?
You said, was it Brett Sawyer or Brett just passed away?
It might have been Brett, the one who just passed away.
That was Brett, yeah, and his brother Buzz passed away quite a while back. But yeah, and I knew Brett quite well. He and I worked together a lot early in my career. But well, yeah, I mean, it's they kind of went different ways in their career, but they both had very good careers.
But he talked so much about now he wanted to get back into the business and do the autograph signing, the meet and greet. He was looking forward to it, and he just really trying to figure out how it worked. And it was his first time out. And then 3 months later, he's dead.
Yeah. That's why you can't take anything for granted. You can't waste time.
You let the business choose who are in the history books. WWE choose who are in the encyclopedia. Not the fans, not the people, but the company. So I think the company should have a little bit more input to the business in helping the long run, the history of it, in developing something that principle, WWE just fired a lot of people, a lot of named people. And one of the guys say, how do you love something that don't love you back? And that's his opinion. That's his opinion. He's entitled to it.
Sure. And and that's it. But that's a part of this business. It's everyone in wrestling. We're a product. I mean, we have an opportunity. We are our product. All that AEW does, or WWE, or whoever, all they do is give us a shelf, a platform to present our product. And every product has a shelf life.
But if you can compare, I'm gonna start with Sheik first, and I will come to you. If you can compare Sheik, I know you say you open a lot of different businesses. Yeah. What business would you compare to the wrestling business, and how?
Honestly, there's a lot of parallels to the jewelry business and the wrestling business, because you could go off and think that you have done all the right moves, made all the right investments, and at the end of the day, you got to liquidate product because it's just not selling. That's the wrestling business to me. You could be there, you could be on time, you could show up and do all the right things and still be looked over at certain promotions because that's not what they need. And that's the thing is, you got to figure out where you fit in, because you as a product might not work for every promotion. You got to go and work as many as you can, try different places. And the main thing though is you hear people going through, gimmick changes or character changes. I don't believe in that. I believe if you're you, someone's going to love that. As long as you're your true 100% unforgivable, unapologetic you, someone is going to be into that, because everybody loves the truth. No one can run away from the truth. It is universal. So to me, I feel like there's a lot of parallels to the jewelry business and the wrestling business. I've made investments that didn't pan out. I've made investments that panned out amazingly. And I feel like the same thing I've seen in my short time, 2.5 years being a professional wrestler. I've been to some promotions where they're like, "Oh, we love you. We want to have you back over and over again." I've been to some promotion that's like, you know what, maybe next time. So that's what this business is in my eyes.
Oh, okay, Glacier. Now I want you to take that same question and see how you deal with it. What do you compare? What business do you compare the wrestling business to?
Oh, let me see. Well, the acting business. Being an actor, because and it's Sheik. One of the things that I hope that you may remember this when I talked about this some in the camp was actors they love their craft, and most people who become professional wrestlers they love the craft, they love the art form of professional wrestling, and what I feel like the biggest mistake that I've seen, because I'm a professionally trained actor, a working actor, as well as professionally trained wrestler and working wrestler. And the parallels I see the most, especially in the inexperienced talent, say 1 to 5 years in the business, is that they don't. It's a different mindset. They're unintentionally in the wrong mindset. They don't mean to be, and what I mean is they give their power away by saying, "Please love me. I'm going to go out there and do this. I hope you love me. Please love me." Instead of doing it because they love it, and it being taking a powerful stance in, "I love this. I'm going to do everything I can to be the best that I can. If it's a good fit for you and you like it, that's great. If not, then yes, I'll make adjustments based on maybe if crowd reaction is not reacting to something. But as far as me validating whether I should be doing this based on the fact that you may or may not love me, that's by giving my power away for you to have that power." I see a big parallel between the acting business and the wrestling business, especially with the more inexperienced wrestlers.
Okay, well, I'm going to take on that same question. My comparison to any business outside of wrestling would be that of the stripping business, strip club. And wrestling is fast. We dress up in these big superheroes. We make people hate us. We want to make people love us. The money is fast. It's a big party. Then all of a sudden it just disappeared. It's like, where did all that love go? Where did that hate go? It's just like, maybe you guys haven't been in the strip club, but
I never have.
I feel like this was just Cat's excuse to talk about strip clubs. This whole question was a setup. That's all he wanted to do.
The old Cat been in the strip club quite a bit. And I learned right then, those hoes don't love you. And that's the same thing about wrestling. We don't hate our fans, but we act like we do. They want us to hate them. The crowd want to be hated or loved, just like the wrestler. We want to be hated or loved. So I compare that, man. The money is quick. The love is not there, but you get the projection to have whatever you want. The opportunity is right there in front of you. I'm going to make this guy hate me or love me. So I think you can compare it to the strip club business.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I see that. Yeah.
I know y'all mad at me, Glacier. I know you don't like that because you're a good guy. The Sheik is a good guy, but to me, that's what it was like when I was in the business.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's one of the things that I remember. I was really fortunate enough to get to become friends with Lou Thez, and Lou was, for those that have been longtime fans of the wrestling business, Lou Thez was he was the Babe Ruth of our business. Youngest NWA World Heavyweight Champion, 6-time world champion. The guy that was really the measuring stick for a long, still is really in our business, as far as the success he had, not only as a wrestler, but mainstream success. I mean, he rubbed shoulders with, the biggest Hollywood celebrities back in the day. I mean, he was, that guy. But I just remember him always saying, this was before my WCW days. This is when I was going back and forth to Japan. And he said, "Hey, listen, just remember, whenever you meet, fans, they expect to meet the person they see in the ring or on TV. They have no interest in getting to know you personally, who you are. They want to have an experience with that persona that you've shown them in the ring.
Hey, when you see a lady, you paying $10, putting a $10 in a little stocking thing, you want that person to be that same person you just saw on the stage. You don't want to hear about the 8 kids she got at home. You don't want to hear about the 3 jobs she got to work in the morning. She a school teacher. You want her to be that same person you just said. So that's why I just said the wrestling business and the scripted business is almost the same.
Yeah.
But Glacier, I do want to ask you, you were trained by, I know you trained the Sheik. You put some time and effort into his approach, on being in this business, right? How many people have you trained, you think? If you can put a number on it, how many do you think you have out there right now floating around?
If I had to put a number on it, I'd say conservatively, ones who I would proudly want them to, that I would probably say, yes, I trained that person, or I had a hand in training that person. Like with Sheik, of course, I just had a hand in training him along with QT, Marshall, and Cody, and some visiting coaches we had come in during that time. But I'd say maybe, I've done seminars probably for thousands of people, but I'd say there's probably only about maybe a couple of hundred that I would really give my stamp of approval, that I'd put my name behind it.
Man, and think about it. You just one person. So you can put 200 students out there trying to get that one position in probably in what, 3 major companies? Yeah. You just said 2. What would you say? 3 major companies? WWE, AEW.
And there's Impact, of course. Ring of Honor, let's face it, everyone knows Ring of Honor is really kind of a subdivision of AEW. New Japan Wrestling is huge, but to your average wrestling fan in America, and it's getting, they're getting more where they know more of New Japan, but your average wrestling fan, may not know anything about New Japan, even though over in Japan, of course, it's immensely huge. So I would say the benchmark for in the United States is, the 2 companies where you can make a great living, is AEW and WWE. So that's what most people aspire to get there. But that's the one thing too that I think, for whatever reason, in the wrestling world, so many aspiring wrestlers live in this little bubble of, all I need to do is let them see me, and then they'll want me for the roster. That may be the case, but just understand, for the most part, the general rule is if they're gonna sign you to come in to be a part of that roster, then that means somebody's getting bumped off. And every single person that's on that roster who's getting paid, they do not want to lose their spot to anybody else. So it's a vicious battle of competition. So, it's not just about impressing them enough to sign you. It's just knowing that when you come in, there's somebody who's on the chopping block because they signed you. Usually that's how it works.
Now, I saw that Sheik. I saw that you posted something of Jade, the young lady I think she just signed with WWE, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So I saw people been putting her in these makeup matches already. What's the girl in WWE with the long ponytail?
Bianca Belair.
Yeah. Now you look at those 2 on paper. And then pictures. That looked like a hell of a match. That looked like, 2 strong Black women. That looked like it would be a good match, right? But that don't necessarily mean that's what WWE has planned for her. That's what people don't understand. It's not like Muhammad Ali fighting Joe Frazier. Everybody can see that this going to be a big fight. No, they may sign Muhammad Ali and then put Muhammad Ali against, somebody else less than Joe Frazier. So the business is a business, and we forget that the business is run like a business. It's treated like a business. So when we look at it, and I talk to people about getting into wrestling, the first thing I ask is, okay, well, what are you going to do after? Wrestling may only last a year or 2 years or 3 years. You got to have a way and something to do after wrestling. So you being the businessman, Sheik, you just go right back to your business, right? I mean, so now let me, I know where I was going with that. I forgot, I got lost for a minute, but I know where I was going with that. Let's say WWE says, Sheik, we need you. We want to bring you in. We're going to sign you to a contract. You're going to travel on the road 280 days a year, and we're going to give you a bottom pay of $100,000. Now, you're a married man, you got a business, you got kids. Are you willing to take that contract just to show them what you're willing to do? Or is that something you pass up?
I would absolutely take that contract because that is one of my dreams. So I would love to be in that position. But after, let's say, a year or two goes by and say, they decide not to renew me or whatever. I think your question was, would I just go back to my business or what would I do?
No, that was not the question. You trying to make up. The question was, would you take that job?
I'm sorry. I said yes, I would take the job. Yeah.
I mean, it's just $100,000.
That's fine. I'm not doing this for the money. I'm not doing this for the money.
Okay, well, it's 280 days a year. It means you're going to be on the road. Just means you're going to be away from your kids, from your wife.
We'll make it work.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Absolutely. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. My kids can come and see me work too.
280 days means you may have sore ankles one day. You may have a bad back one day. You may be hurt one day.
3 or 4 weeks out of the month, sometimes I'm traveling for my work already. So
yeah, but you traveling different. You going to wrestle. You going to beat your body up. In Glacier, that's what I was talking about, Ray. With the business not all. It's just not all pretty sights and going to these nice towns and staying in these nice hotels. Glacier, what are some of the places that you went to when you were wrestling WCW that you just hated? What city did you just not want it to be? You just did not want to be there. It was a dirty, low down, stinky place.
Here we go. Glacier heel promo. Glacier heel promo right now. Let's go.
No, I mean, me, man. It's funny. I don't remember so much the places I hated. I remember the places I loved. It's crazy,
What did you love then? What place did you love?
My all-time favorite arena to wrestle in was the United Center in Chicago, because I don't know if you remember, but we did one episode of Nitro. It was one of my favorite ones. It was like the second. It's the time of you had just debuted with me. You came out of the crowd on the pay-per-view. I think somewhere we were in North Carolina somewhere, but this was the first episode of Nitro where you came out of the crowd again to save my rear end again for taking a vicious beating from Mortis and but it's just a time when Chicago, just Chicago. It's here I am, a kid from South Georgia, from a very modest sized community, and here I am walking in, and it was the time when the Bulls were on top of the world with Michael Jordan and Pippen, and of course Rodman was working with. So to be able to walk in that locker room and dress in that same locker room at that time when that great era of basketball was going on, and just to be in that world and then go out there and we as WCW filled that arena just like the Chicago Bulls could fill that arena. It was just a magical
it was nice. And I was about to say Chicago is one of the worst places. I hated Chicago. When I went there, it's like I was getting ready to do an episode of JJ Moving On Up. One of those TV shows. It was dirty, it was hard, it was downtown, but the crowd, like you said, they came out, man. United Center was sold out when we was there. I do remember that because that was the first time I went and put my red shoes on. It was my first time. It was my first time wearing the red shoes to kick somebody.
And outside of Chicago, Las Vegas was always. I had never been to Las Vegas before we started going there for Nitro and Halloween Havoc, and it's just I'm not somebody who gambles, but I really enjoy watching people who enjoy gambling. I really enjoy sitting there just watching people that do, and I just I've always loved the carnivals. So let's face it, when you're walking around Las Vegas, it looks like one big carnival. And so I always loved the magic of Las Vegas. I always, just, as we grew up, during the, the 80s, Cat, like some of the greatest boxing matches of all time took place in Las Vegas. And, whether it was the MGM Grand or Caesar's Palace, and for us to be able to wrestle there in the same arenas where some of these great boxing matches happened was, just, like I said, it was, for me, it was surreal because I was just a kid from South Georgia,
when we went to New York, what's the big arena in New York? When Muhammad Ali fought, what's the big arena?
Was
the
Garden? Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, Madison Square Garden. When we first went there, man, I sat down and I said, I can't believe I'm gonna be performing here at the Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
I mean, that's with Muhammad Ali, James Brown, all my greats have been there before.
Yeah, and and all the great wrestlers, have headlined there too. So, but I got a question. Just Sheik, in the 2.5 years, it's related to what you just asked us. But what in your 2.5 years so far, what's been your best experience, or if you have one or two of anywhere you wrestle?
I feel like recently I came out and wrestled at a show called Mucha Lucha, which happens here in Norcross. And I got to team with one of my buddies, and we were in a trios match. And we were actually, the crowd was behind us. So I guess we were a bit of what you would call a baby face. And I got to work that for the first time, because usually I come out and I get a good amount of heat from the crowd. So I usually, use that to my advantage. And I got to work that way. And afterwards, kids were coming up to me and asking me to take photos with them and sign things. And it was different. It was very different. And I got to see another side of the business that I love through my eyes. And I feel like just stuff like that has nothing to do with a payout or how large the crowd is, but like to see another side of the coin is one of the moments that like sticks with me for a very long time.
Well, that's great. I know they typically draw great crowds, so I'm sure that was it.
It was also a good crowd, but to get in, and as soon as I got tagged in and I'm in the ring, my first time ever in that venue, it was just people going Sheik, 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 Sheik. So it was a different experience. It was definitely a different experience. Rather than you suck, you suck, you suck.
Yeah, but it is.
They told me, good or bad, you just want the crowd to do something.
Yeah. The worst sound the crowd could ever make is silence.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You want the crowd to do something. You don't want them to. You don't want to just sit on their hands.
No, it's hard these days because everybody has a magic rectangle in front of them that they can pull out and just not pay attention at all. So
it's even harder. Yeah,
you gotta fight the technology that they have in their pocket. So I got to work a convention recently, MomoCon, and that crowd, we got them into it. And I'm sure they're at a convention. They're probably posting everything, had their phones with them the whole time. But man, that crowd was cheering who they wanted to, booing who they wanted to, and they were just loud, which was amazing.
They was a smart crowd. I went there to see him on the last day.
No. You didn't just come to see me. You interfered in my match. Okay, you came in. You played dirty.
Paid me to.
I paid for your ticket for the convention. I didn't pay for you to come and kick me in the face.
You paid me a couple $1,000.
Cat told me all day long, I'm the cat. I'll be able to get in. Don't worry about it. He calls me. He's like, listen, they're not letting me in. You think you can buy me a ticket? I was like, sure. I'll send someone.
Throw me an extra diamond ring.
I didn't like all those nerds anyway.
I thought they were your type.
Glacier, I'm going to call out a couple of names. Who was Fred Avery?
Fred was the guy who originally trained me. He was the one. I give him all the credit in the world. Of course, like I said, Sandy Beach certainly helped some. Sandy Beach, Rick Allen introduced me to Fred Avery. But and Fred and I are still great friends to this day. I learned he's a perfect example of what I mean by old school tough. His gimmick was that he's called Easy Rider Ruckus. I mean, he like a biker gimmick. And when I first met him, I watched him wrestle. I thought that's probably all what he was. I realized when I met him outside of wrestling, he was anything but that. But when he started training me and my former college teammate. he was a very accomplished amateur wrestler. Had a great high school wrestling record when he was in high school. Wrestled in Warner Robins, which was very big sports town, still is to this day as far as football tradition and wrestling tradition. And so one of my first lessons in professional wrestling came from, don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, he had a great gimmick that worked for him because, like I said, he was a big old hairy, big old, just imposing looking guy, and the biker gimmick was very convincing. But he was also very accomplished amateur wrestler, and so I got to learn. That was one of my first lessons, and he's a high school wrestling coach still. I think he may just be getting ready to retire over in North Florida, but.
Okay, Coach, just a little bit. I don't want you don't have to talk my head off.
I go on because I give Fred a lot of credit, because without Fred I wouldn't even be talking.
I got a couple of more names.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick.
I did not. Now, you don't have to keep it quick, but this is something I didn't know he trained you. Bob Armstrong. What about who is that?
Well, Bullet Bob. Bob didn't really.
I know Bullet Bob.
Yeah.
I did not know he trained you.
Man. No, he didn't. That's one of the things that is out there on the internet. Fred trained me, but I started very early in our career. Me and R.D. Swain, who was my tag team partner, who I played football with, we worked for Peach State Wrestling, which was a great regional promotion owned by a promoter named Ben Masters, who was just a great friend, great human being, and Ben brought in. A lot of the guys that were especially Georgia legends at that time. And this would have been like, I think we started with him around the summer of '88. And of course, he brought in, Bob Armstrong a lot. He brought in Mr. Wrestling #2, who was a huge star in Georgia. The Oates brothers, Ted and Jerry Oates, and Ted especially. So we got a chance to really, as Sheik said earlier, sit under their learning tree, a lot of on-the-job training almost right out of the gate after Fred officially trained. So even though Bob didn't have a hand in, actually officially training me, he had a great hand in me just being able to learn from him watching our matches and then us watching his matches. When we were working for this regional promotion, Peach State Wrestling.
Other than now, I saw Mr. Wrestling #2 on there. So did you have that? Bob Armstrong and Mr. Wrestling #2 was my favorite wrestler.
Yeah,
those were two of my favorite. Now, I remember there was a time. Didn't you meet old Ernie Ladd one time?
I didn't. I knew a lot of the veteran wrestlers who knew Ernie Ladd, but I never really got to meet Ernie. He's one of the few people I never got to meet that was on my list. But I did get to meet and worked a lot with Ray Candy, Big Ray Candy. Who was a big Georgia star.
What Ray Candy got to do Ernie Ladd? So you go from one black one to another black. That's not it, Ray.
Okay.
I remember Ray Candy though.
Yeah,
big old Ray Candy.
Yeah.
Hey, how about Bobo Brazil? You remember that guy?
Of course, man. And he's one of the others that I wanted so much to meet, and I never got to meet him. And I would have loved to, though. My gosh, I would have loved to have met Bobo Brazil.
Man, I'm naming off a few. Thunderbolt Patterson. Oh, I got to meet him.
I did. Yeah, and same here. And Thunderbolt was another one that Ben Masters brought in a lot. As a matter of fact, Thunderbolt Patterson was when I grew up in Brunswick, Georgia. There's two islands, St. Simon's Island, Jekyll Island, that are kind of right there. And my dad was stationed with Georgia State Patrol in Jekyll Island. And so there was a time when they started running wrestling shows at the convention center on Jekyll. And so, of course, my brother and I would go with our buddies. And this is when I was probably, 10th grade maybe. And I remember the main event to this day was Thunderbolt Patterson and a guy named Wild Bull Curry, who really looked like he comes straight out of a Neanderthal caveman, But getting to see Thunderbolt live and in color, man, and just feeling that energy that he had, and once again, just that charisma that he had was undeniable. I mean, it was so easy to see why he was such a big attraction, especially in Georgia, Florida areas. I mean, he was just, you couldn't, your eyes were glued to him. I mean, he was just so magnetic,
Just like the Junkyard Dog.
JYD, yeah.
Just to have a conversation with these guys, you could just feel the charisma.
Yeah,
just the way they talk to you, just the way they engage with you. You could feel that. But hey, we were pretty. We had it pretty good too because we had Mr. Pez Watley, baby.
Yeah, the legendary Pistol Pez Watley.
Mr. Pez, well, all of those guys put in one, I think.
Yeah, when you know, I know we'll probably come back on maybe on a different episode and talk more about the movie that we've been working on. But you know, in the film, it's called The Unbreakable Bunch. We actually pay homage to Pez. The RV that we traveled in is has a sticker on the side that says the Pistol Pez Express.
Hey, listen. You know, before we get off here, let's go and tell us a little bit about my movie.
Well, I know what. I mean, you got this movie would not be the same without you in it. I can tell you that because you know, you brought such a valuable part to this film.
Well, let me ask you a few questions about it.
Yeah.
How did I do? If just right now, grade my quality of acting. How did I do?
Of course, you did great. Listen, you got my favorite line in the whole movie. You know, it's pro wrestling versus aliens. You know, that sounds like a monster movie. So. but
man, you know the hardest part of that movie, of doing that movie, and I tell everybody this, was trying to keep the weight off. Oh man, you know, it was hard for some reason. I ate everything in front of me.
Catering was great. You know.
Oh man, I gained like 20 pounds.
Yeah, well, and you know, and Sheik, you were there when we ended up doing some pickup shots, weren't you?
I think I'm in the movie a little bit.
You are actually. You know what? Yeah. I can tell you. You did. You made the final cut in the when we had the alien invasion at the end. There's some good shots of you in there. Yes, awesome, I can tell you for sure. Yes.
Yeah, I peeped myself in the trailer a little bit. I saw a little bit of the Sheik in there.
Yeah, and you get you got some green eyes in the movie, so glowing green eyes.
Who came up with the alien part? I don't understand.
Well, you know, I give so much credit, you know, to Luther Biggs, you know, Steve Luther Wilson, who was, my co-producing partner on this, and it was his original concept way back in the day when we first started putting this idea together. But you know, originally we thought we may make an action adventure film that was more of like pro wrestlers kind of meets walk and talk. You know, like we would happen along in this small country town, and it was kind of run by the Dixie Mafia type thing, and we'd end up helping the town take back the town from like the Dixie Mafia. And then at some point we were like, you know what? I mean, that probably would be a cool movie, but then if we had to shoot people, we'd be shooting real people, the characters that were real people. And then at some point we thought, you know, let's make this a lot of fun. Instead of, you know, us battling people, let's battle some aliens, you know? And so we went back and retooled the story to make it a science fiction twist in there. And we were both big fans of They Live, you know, with Roddy Piper and, you know, directed by John Carpenter. So we really wanted to kind of pay homage to that. And so that's why we really put the sci-fi element in there. And I think the final edited version people are going to really like because it's a lot of fun in the movie, the way we lay the story out. And I think people are really going to enjoy it.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to tell the world, and we shooting this right now. The movie haven't even been released. But I'm going to tell you, it's going to be one of the best sci-fi movies you can ever go see. It's going to live forever.
I hope so. I really do, because, you know, that's why we made it. We made it, you know.
Just like the Iron Sheik Big Belly. It's going to live forever.
Well, you know, and that's honestly, Kat, you know, I mean, the reason why when I first sat down and talked to you and then talked to Tonga and Zabisco and Dallas and everybody was that, you know, it's time for a wrestling movie that celebrates everything that's great about wrestling, you know, pro wrestling, because most movies tear down our business or show the dark side. And that's, you know, that's side's not there, but we decided, you know, it's time for a movie that celebrates everything that's great about this business.
Glacier, I sat down with my aunt who's about 74, 75, and she's been really sick lately. You know, she'd had a hard pace put in, and, you know, she just liked for people to come and sit with her. So I was sitting with her at her house, and she watched Sci-Fi Channel all the time. So she was watching some movie, man, and it was like the alien looked like the alien in our movie.
Yeah,
that's what they look like, the glow eyes. But in the movie, they had blood everywhere.
Yeah.
For some reason, a nigga later just show up and I mean expose everything. And at that moment, it made me feel a little uncomfortable. The language was bad. It made me feel uncomfortable. But then when I thought about it, I said, you know what, Auntie, we just finished a movie like this. And it made me feel so good to feel like that movie we just finished, I could be right here with her watching that and not feeling out of place. Because that's something you wanted. You didn't want that kind of stuff in the movie.
No, yeah, this movie we were very determined to make, and God willing, we'll be able to make a second one and hopefully a third one and more. But we decided the formula that we were going to use is to make a good family-friendly movie that the whole family could sit down and watch. There's not really action movies, that you can really do that with anymore, and especially not an action sci-fi type movie. And the big thing is like profanity. And the thing is, like, I listen, I get the world we live in. There's a lot of profanity. I get all that. My challenge, Luther and our challenge was, and I just was telling someone this today earlier, is another reason why, it wasn't the main reason, but one of the reasons why we decided we didn't really want any profanity in the movie is we want to challenge the writers, challenge ourselves to be creative and try to make creative lines and creative story without that as just the obvious crutch that everybody leans on. And because that back in the wrestling day, and I always use what Dusty told me way back in the day was, back when they were on TV, there was an era where they couldn't use profanity. And so you had to get creative with what you said. And that's like he said, like, everybody knew when I fought Ric Flair that, that I wanted to kick, Ric Flair's butt. He said, but I couldn't say that. So I came up with saying, I'm going to kick his hiney. I'm going to kick his booty. And that was entertaining and creative. And it was different than just, I remember, Dusty said, heck, my next door neighbor could go out and curse at the audience, so, we just challenged ourselves to be more creative than that.
And today they say anything, man. I was like, some of the stuff I hear on the wrestling show, AEW, is like, wow, man. It was like, we couldn't get away with nothing like that, saying nothing like that.
Yeah.
But the entertainment part of the movie is gonna be great, man. I was just thinking it's gonna be so good where I can sit with my family and say, okay, this is a movie I'm in.
Yeah, well, you know what? And I appreciate that, Kat. And one of the inspirations for how we did all the action in the movie was Luther and I, we grew up in that era, and all three of us that of the Burt Reynolds era, with his action movies, and and a lot of younger fans may not realize that Burt Reynolds in his heyday, for 5 years in a row, he was the #1 box office star in the world. No one's done that since, and 5 years in a row. You think about that. But we got a chance to learn from him directly, and Hal Needham, who was his really, really good friend and stuntman, he wrote and directed Smokey and the Bandit, which is, an iconic movie. And I remember watching a documentary about, and this is when we first started putting this movie together. And I remember him saying that in the real world, car crashes are very violent and very ugly. But, we decided to make a movie where you could take that action and still do that same kind of action, but make it not violent, make it fun, where cars can crash into each other. And at the end of the day, the way it plays out is it's a fun movie where, no one's getting hurt. It's designed to be lighthearted. And so we decided to play our action out like that, where I just always remember what he said when we were doing the action. Action doesn't have to be violent just for the sake of having action. And there's a lot of kicks and punches and explosions and stuff in our movie, but it's done in a way that, there's not people, even though we're shooting aliens, and aliens are shooting at us at times, there's no one's head who's getting blown off, and stuff like that. No one's arms getting ripped off,
Let me get away from this movie real quick. I got questions that came to my head. If you could go back and redo your career all over in wrestling, would it be WCW, AEW, or WWE? Which one would you choose if you can choose to do that career redo again?
There's some things that I would definitely, say that I would maybe do differently. But one, I would go to WCW because, just the era that I grew up in. I only WWE, it was WWF at the time that we got to really see was like when it became, remember when it was WWF Saturday Night, they did it on CBS or NBC. And then if not, I was just trying to get bits and pieces of WWF back then. But I grew up on Georgia Championship Wrestling, which later, was connected to NWA, and which that later would become WCW. So because that was the world that I grew up in, if I'd have been up north, I'm sure my goal would have been to go to WWF. I grew up there, but growing up where I did, WCW was always the goal, so that has never changed. So if I had to go back and do it all over again, and if WCW were still here, that's where I feel like I'd be trying to go.
Okay, here go a good one for me. Vince McMahon or Eric Bischoff? Who would you want to work for?
Well, I got a chance to work for Eric, and overall, it was a great experience. I would have, I remember Paul Orndorff telling me, like he told a lot of us at the power plant, that your goal should always be to try to have a great run, a good run at both companies and not burn any bridges, in between, so that you could say at the end of the day, like you, that you had a good run at both companies. So being I never worked for Vince, I've only gone on what I've seen and what I've heard. I mean, I still would have liked to have been over, and I did, I got the opportunity right after WCW, but it's funny when I was thinking about it, when you were telling, giving that scenario of the Sheik, I got offered a certain amount of money. It wasn't super great money. And after being on the road for 5 years, it was a time when, Dusty had just started Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling in Marietta. I had a chance to go back to, I was, to teach and kind of go back to a normal life and still love wrestling by working with Dusty. And I took that rather than going to WWE. And there's a part of me that always wonders what if, but no regrets, because I really got a chance to become the right-hand man to my childhood hero, which is Dusty. So, yeah, as we did Eric's podcast a couple of weeks ago, I always, there's a lot of things people can say good and bad about Eric, positive and negative, but without Eric giving me an opportunity, we wouldn't be sitting here right now, so I'm eternally grateful there.
So did Eric give you an opportunity? Is that how you got into this?
But I always go back to Sheik, and I always say it's my favorite quote. I told you guys in camp is, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who willing to say they know you. And Dallas Page was willing to say he knew me, and he talked to Eric about me, and that's how I got I went to meet Eric over dinner, and we had, as I remember, it being about a 3-hour dinner, just conversation mostly about martial arts, the first half of the conversation. And then eventually at the end of that dinner, he told me, I want to sign you to a deal right there at the end of that, which I wasn't expecting. And, and it took a little while to work it out after that, but yeah, it was, but I was ready at that time, Kat. I had at that time had 9 years in. I was ready,
Oh, bro, you was in the best shape. And that's what I'm saying. Your wrestling ability, you could sell like Ricky Steamboat. You could fire up, man. You could fire up like Ric Flair. Man, you had it all, man. You had the straight, the spiky hair.
Yeah, I'm still trying to hold on to that. But
yeah, but I'm just saying, and you were one hell of a guy. I've never seen.
Thank you, man.
I never heard you complain in the whole time in the business. Everybody complained about something. Even the guys that were making millions and millions of dollars complained about roasted chicken instead of having grilled chicken.
Yeah.
It was people. It was a bunch of millionaires around there that complained about everything that was going on in WCW, and they treated me the best I've ever been treated in a job before. But then when I went to WWE and I worked with Vince, man, I like, the difference that they are different, but they're almost alike. Eric was a man of his word. Anything he said he was going to do, he did it. Vince McMahon was kind of like a businessman that he can say what he said, what he can tell you what he wants you to do with a smile on his face. And if you didn't do it, a knife was gonna be in your back, and you kind of felt that even through that smile, But he was up front, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do.
Yeah, that's why, like I said, you did exactly what Orndorff said everybody should do, which is have a good run in both companies, and not burn any bridges, which is what you did. And so, Sheik, if you could transport yourself back in time with us in the 90s, who would you have rather worked for, Eric or Vince?
Matt Donalds.
Wow. Coming from you?
You always mess with
All
me.
right.
Glacier, he mess
No,
with me all the time.
don't believe him. No, Ernest always mess with me. Trust me, he always messes with me. He always throws the first punch.
Well, you know that if Ernest is messing with you and he's spending time, ribbing on you, that means he cares about you.
That's very true. To answer your question, I would say Eric Bischoff at WCW as well. I grew up in Atlanta. I grew up here, and you guys were in my backyard. You guys came to the Georgia Dome many times, sold out that place. The energy here, the feeling, the support was like no other. But I will say that both of you owe me money, because one time I came to see a WCW show and they promised my dad that they would give us the best seats in the house. And we were up in the 300 section of the nosebleeds at the Georgia Dome. So
we have nothing to do with that.
No, it was you. It was you specifically, Kat. It was you specifically that did that.
Well, we'll introduce you to Eric. You need to take it up with him. So
okay, deal. I'll do that. Well, I'll talk to Eric about it. But no, it was that was actually the first time I actually went to see live wrestling. And even though we were up in the nosebleeds and my dad kind of felt bad about it, you felt the energy, and it's different. It's hard to explain. And I can't believe there are people out there that have never been to a live wrestling show. When you go to one, it's just different. The atmosphere is different. The energy is different. And you have to go to one. You have to go experience that once in your life. I firmly believe that. I've been to smaller shows since then. I've been to WrestleMania when it was the last Mania at the Georgia Dome. Now we have the Mercedes-Benz Dome. And, Cody was in that WrestleMania against Rey Mysterio. And during training, he told us about that match too, and gave us good pointers about why we should wipe our feet before we get in the ring.
Yes.
But yeah, but
wait a minute.
WCW.
Why?
Why? Because they had a match that involved smashing up a car towards the end of the match on the ramp. I think it involved like Edge and Alberto Del Rio. But Cody had to walk through what was left behind, the debris. And, he was getting into the ring and wiped, and he actually, I think, cut some of the canvas because there was glass on the bottom of his boot. And if he hadn't done that, he would have, tracked the glass into the ring, and that would have been hazardous for both wrestlers. So,
hey, I used to hate what Goldberg used to do in the ring. I don't know if you remember this.
You mean Goldberg, win? You used to hate how he used to win because you couldn't do it?
No, not the work part, but Glacier. Do you remember? Goldberg used to get in the ring and he'd be so fired up, he'd forget that it's entertainment. He'll blow his nose, he'll spit on the ring. I'm like, man, what are you doing, man? This is our office. He'll blow his nose right in the middle of the ring. It was so nasty.
Just snot rockets left and right.
Yeah, like an angry bull, So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but Glacier, I'm gonna let you go. But listen, before you go, I want you to give my boy. He's been in the business 2.5 years. I got a pair of drawers I bought 3 years ago. So I'm just saying, he's new to the business. Give him a little bit of advice from teacher to student.
Please.
What would you advise him? He with what you know about him, give him a little advice.
I have notebooks. I have notebooks with volumes of Glacier's advice, but I'll always accept more advice. I'll always accept more advice.
Hey, I'm trying to help you out. Keep your cheeks shut. Keep your mouth shut. Hey, Glacier, talk to this young fella and give him a little advice.
I can sum it up in 3 words, and Sheik's heard me say this, I'm sure. Show up everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere that has anything to do with pro wrestling, if you're serious about really getting your name and face out there, that's what most people won't do. They'll pick and choose, and they'll go to 4 places when they should have gone to 10 places over a month. You just got to get yourself out there, and that's why I always say too, I'm not a fan of this starving artist mentality in wrestling. Sheik, you're doing it the right way, man. You got a great career, you got a business. You're not saying, oh, I got to starve just to chase my wrestling dream. And nobody does. Like I said, I was a school teacher, and I chased the dream, realistically. And I say that meaning I had my job, I had good insurance. It was Monday through Friday, but I had, a lot of time to pursue the wrestling. And And I did, I showed up everywhere I could. So that's what the best advice I give is you don't have to be a starving artist. Get a good job that does complement your wrestling schedule, but and that just takes some, that's just ingenuity and based on what you want to do as far as work and how much you really want to put yourself out there. But that's it, Kat. Really, is show up everywhere. Show up everywhere you can. And we know because we've all been there and you've seen it a lot too, Sheik, in your 2.5 years, especially at indie shows. I could venture to say that 9 out of 10 times, if you go to an indie show and you're not booked, if you're ready and you're prepared, somehow you will find yourself on that show just because most indie shows are just absolute chaos and people don't show up and all of a sudden things get changed. And if you show up consistently, even if you're not on that card, typically there'll be a position that comes open for you to get on that card.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree.
So that's it. I always say, Kat, show up everywhere.
Well, Glacier, I'd like to thank you for coming here on the Cat's Corner, Glacier.
Oh, we can't. Listen, you and I can go on forever, but before I forget, you got to tell, because my favorite story of us doing the movie, you got to tell Sheik and tell your audience. When I first called you to do the movie, I told you about the movie. What's the first question you asked me?
Well, let me give a little backstory to it.
Okay.
Back in the day growing up, every time you would see a scary movie or something like that, right? You would see a bunch of scared people. You see a bunch of white people and maybe one black person. And out of that bunch, the first person to get caught by the killer or killed by the monster will always be that black person. So when you asked me to be in this movie, the first thing I asked you was, when do I get killed? If you had said it in the beginning, I would say no. But you said you don't. And that came as a big surprise when you say you don't get killed. We like you.
Yeah. Well, actually, the funny thing is I never looked at it like that until you said it to me. And I was just like, man, of course, that was kind of like always a running joke, among the film industry. And I was like, no, man, heck no. When you get to, and even if somehow he would have gotten killed, I would have gone back and switched the script and not told him, But but he did. His character wasn't going to get killed.
Hey, big Sheiky, is there anything you like to say to your mentor, your coach, or anything before we go? I want to get it on camera. I want to have this so when it airs, I want to show people who watch this and listen to the Cats podcast. I want them to hear how much you appreciate your instructor, if you do, and how much you cherish the lessons that he taught you.
I would say there is something that I didn't tell Coach Ray after I graduated, and it was one of the first assignments he gave us, which he didn't tell us to complete it right away. He said, you're gonna complete this assignment at the end of the camp, but I'm gonna give you the assignment at the beginning of the camp. And that was, give me the reason why you want to be a wrestler or why you want to do this. And it took me a while to figure it out. First, I had to figure out what wrestling was and who I was and everything in between. But along the way, I was talking to my wife one night about what we do at the camp, about everything we're doing, including the part where you kicked our butts working out, including the part where you kicked our butts with the drills, where we had to sit there and be coachable, like you said, and take critique and all this. And I was, without even knowing it, she pointed this out. I was speaking about everything with a huge smile on my face, with joy in my voice, with what she said was my zone of genius. So I would have to say is one thing that I am very thankful is that you gave me that assignment, because I figured out the reason I want to do this is just because I love everything about being an entertainer and everything about being in front of people and conveying a story and a message and connecting with people. I love it.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you did the work, man, because I said this, the non-glamorous work. It's not sometimes fun to do it, and it doesn't happen overnight sometimes. And why it may change and evolve a little bit as you go, but it does help. It helps so much to know why you're doing this, because that way you're not just out there floundering blindly, trying to figure it out. But,
sure.
Hey, Kat, I'm going to tell you something. Kat, I have not told you this about Sheik, but one of the one of the most admirable things that I've seen anybody do, and I haven't even said this to him, so I'm glad we get a chance to share this together, is, there were, and like most people that break into this business, like I said, a lot of them have that starving artist mentality. And we had a pretty big group. Your group was a pretty big group. And
25, I think, 25 people. Yeah, 25.
So we all went to what was it? The restaurant that we all went to afterwards.
Taco Mac.
Taco Mac, and
Taco Mac.
And Taco Mac's a great place, but it's not necessarily a real cheap place. I mean, the food's good and everything, but it's it's a little, it can be a little pricey, and Cat, there was a good amount of the group went, so you can imagine, the numbers were pretty good, and and a lot of those people in that camp, they didn't have a lot of money to spend, and I knew that a lot of them were, to go and spend money that night was something that would be a financial hit to a lot of them, but they went anyway because we were all grooving as a group. But at the end of the night, Sheik picked up the tab, and at the end, and didn't tell anybody he was going to do it. He just did it, and it just spoke volumes of you as a human being in a position. I know you didn't do it for any gratitude or any to show it, is you did it because you could, and which is the best reason in the world. And you knew, whether they ever said it to you or not, you knew how much it would mean to some of them to be able to save however amount of money they saved that night, because it would have been a financial hit for some of them to pay their own bill that night, and my hat's off to you, because that was something you certainly didn't have to do. And it was just a great thing to see, that another human being was willing to do that for that group of people that 12 weeks earlier he didn't even know. So my hat's off to you, buddy.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Coach Ray.
Man, listen, I can listen to these sad sob stories all day, but y'all too weak. What y'all want to hug? Get a hotel room.
Just high five.
I mean,
hey, let me tell you the best. Let me tell you the best piece of advice that Cat ever gave me. He said, "If the police ever catch you, give them my real legal name. It's Ray Lloyd."
But hey, let's give props where props are due too. Sheik and Cat. You know how much I've said, how much I thank you for this, but Sheik, think about how many days during your 12 weeks, just your 12-week camp, how many days Cat drove over and was there, stopped by the camp and put some time in, when he didn't have to. That was all just because he wanted to come over. And, and Atlanta traffic is a good hour drive, if not more, from where he lives to where the camp was. And, he did that because, he cares about, the future of this business, and he knew there were a lot of good people in that group, and that was just something that's just who he is, which is amazing,
And Glacier, I like to thank you for saying that. But that's one reason I started this podcast, because I want to be able to share my knowledge and my friend's knowledge to those people who are trying to get in the business, or those people who are trying to hear a different side of the business. Because I'm not talking about the business made me a lot of money. The business made me, famous. So I do not hate the business. And the business now changing a little bit. And I want to change with it. That's why I thought the best ingredient to really fulfill that is get someone with the knowledge of old, the one who was in there before. Not calling you old, but you got that knowledge because you love it. And then to get somebody like the Sheik, who can only see it from his side. And that's 2 years in, so it's good, man. I think this is going to be pretty good once we cut it up and get it out there. And hopefully somebody hears something in this that they could take away from it and say, okay, I'm a little smarter now about the business.
Yeah. And maybe there's somebody who's on the fence about whether they should pursue this or not, because it's something they've been thinking about. And maybe we said something that helps them make up their mind one way or the other, So,
yeah, I know one thing. I got a lot of good friends. I got you two guys, man, and I'm glad you guys can come on with me and just have a talk. We didn't need a camera. We didn't need a mic. We didn't need any of this just to be able to talk like this, because we all talk like this. So, Glacier, I'm going to let you get off, Ray, and Big and the Sheiky, and I like to thank you guys for coming in, man, and, chopping it up with me.
Thank you, Kat. Man, anytime.
All right, brother. All right,
Kat, I'm gonna send you my bill for this hour that you took of my life.
$45. All right.
$45 a minute.